My husband believed that, as an orphan, I would never abandon him. So, when his childhood sweetheart deliberately threw herself down the stairs to frame me, he used the threat of divorce to force me to apologize. However, I didn't offer any explanation. I simply picked up my purse and signed. People in Eduardo's family thought they knew me. They thought they had bought my loyalty with tuition payments and with the pity that clings to charity. They thought being an orphan made me expendable, grateful for crumbs. They thought I would accept humiliation because what choice did I really have? They were wrong. I'll start where everyone remembers it, the sitting room. Faces carved into surprise and anger. The divorce papers slid across the lacquered coffee table like a final verdict. They expected a scene, pleading, begging, an apology soaked in shame. Instead, I signed. The room went quiet. Eduardo stared first, like I'd hurt him. "Didn't you read the agreement?" he asked, voice too curious, too small for the man who'd used his grandmother's goodwill to take me in. I wiped my cheeks. I wasn't ashamed of crying. I'd cried long enough already. But when the tears stopped, I could make my face into anything I wanted. I smiled, a smile that didn't ask for permission. I may be poor, and I may be an orphan, but when I saved your grandmother's life, I didn't expect anything in return. She asked me to marry you to cover school fees. I never expected to be treated like a debt. Now, I don't need your money. Then, I emptied my backpack onto the carpet. Textbooks and pens. That was everything I'd brought into their house the day they made me their charity project. I walked them through it, how I had accepted humiliation, how I tried to fit in, how I washed and cooked and swallowed the little slights because I thought family could be taught. Instead, I only got contempt. Everyone thought I married your son for money. Here's your money back. I gave Doña Elena the bank card she'd used to pay my fees and the little notebook where I'd recorded every cent. I never spent a cent of your money. I saved it. If you want to be repaid, take it back. I don't need this charity. They were stunned. Renata, always perfectly composed and always loudly generous in front of friends, asked to verify the card. Go to the bank. I'm not afraid of poverty. You are. There's a moment when astonishment turns into rage. That was when I saw Fabiana, pale, head leaning on Eduardo's chest, tears drip-painted and rehearsed. Her eyes had a smugness before the hospital. They'd practiced victimhood. That was the last straw. The betrayal had a name. She'd thrown herself down the stairs or staged it to make me look dangerous, so Eduardo would divorce me and she could step in. I walked to them. The room thickened with breath. "Do you regret the divorce?" I asked Fabiana. My voice was cold, almost clinical. Her sobbing faltered. "I'm scared," she gasped. "Please make him go away." Eduardo's voice was flat, the same cadence he used to tell me to smile during dinners. "Leticia, you signed. What do you want?" I laughed, a brittle sound that had no humor in it. Then I slapped Fabiana. The sound echoed. No one had slapped Eduardo before. I slapped him too, later, and the family's air of invincibility cracked. "That slap is for falsely accusing me," I said. "If I'd known you planned this, I'd have thrown you myself. You don't deserve to play with people's lives." They could not move me. I had nothing to lose, and that made the finality of my actions clean. I told them I was done. I left while the rain began, like a scene out of some theater they thought they controlled. Outside, my chest felt like an animal in a cage. I called Enrique and asked him to come. Enrique was my friend, and then my planner, and eventually my company of one. He had never asked me to be less than myself. He pulled up in a car with an umbrella, and I let him. I refused his jacket. The rain needed to be felt. I wanted them to see the image of me shrinking into a small coat rather than begging. Back at the tiny room I'd kept before I'd married into that house, the cheap boarding room that smelt faintly of fried onions from the downstairs kitchen, I let myself collapse. Days dragged. Calls I ignored. But then, on the fourth morning, Enrique burst in with his phone. He'd been tracking the news. Fabiana, on a local morning show, had a neck brace and a determined look. "I just want justice," she said, clutching a tissue. The comments were already turning. The web loves victims. People took her side. I felt my face tighten. How had they turned my humiliation into currency? How had Eduardo, who saw everything, stayed silent? Enrique looked at me and asked the question that changed everything. "Do you want justice or revenge?" I said both. Not because I wanted to be vicious, but because I'd been erased publicly and needed to put the facts back in their proper order. We built a strategy. It wasn't cinematic. It was methodical. Collect evidence, sow doubt, reveal inconsistencies, and let the house of cards fall by itself. We started with credibility. If Fabiana was to be believed, then the public would accept her narrative. We needed to show cracks. Enrique found people who had photos of Fabiana partying on the day she'd claimed to be immobile. A former friend came forward with a candid photo of Fabiana dancing at a birthday, same day as the alleged hospital stay. We released it anonymously at first, through a quiet blog with an op-ed titled, "When the Victim Lies, the Other Side of a Familiar Story." We didn't name anyone. We only posed questions. Why no security footage? Why no immediate testimony from the household? The comment threads began to split. From there, we pulled more threads. Renata's public moralizing about internships and helping youth didn't match what former interns told us. Unpaid labor, uniforms charged to them, overtime ignored. Juliana's Instagram, proud quotes about kindness, hid a recording Enrique found of her mocking me with friends. We published audio and testimonies. The outrage that had been stacked against me bent like steel under a blowtorch. And Eduardo, the center of it all. We found messages between him and Fabiana, dating weeks before the fall, flirtatious and intimate. We found the prenuptial clause that negated large payouts in the event of proven infidelity. Suddenly, what had been hush money and moral superiority became legal and public risk. We placed everything where it would matter. Lawyers, a small but diligent journalist who loved the story of an underdog. Then social media, where photos and receipts move faster than statements. He came to me with offers, money, hush, a desperate, pale attempt at bargaining. "This could ruin me," he said. He should have thought of that before he let a lie be the house they built. "I don't want your money," I told him. "I want the truth known." It worked. Doubt turned to scrutiny. Fabiana's carefully curated charity appearances dried up. NGOs withdrew invitations. Brands that had considered sponsoring Renata backed away when her labor practices were exposed. Juliana's circle slunk away after her audio clip leaked. Eduardo was left with his silence, the thing he'd used to protect himself. Appearances dissolved. I did not gloat. I did not scream victory. The work was quiet, legal, precise. I used evidence and patience. People lost reputation and contracts. Fabiana moved cities and her online victim brand evaporated when the photograph of her dancing started circulating. Renata faced lawsuits from former interns and lost a contract worth 6 figures. Juliana's public persona evaporated, and humiliated, she retreated from public life. Meanwhile, I went back to school, to the university I had once attended on someone else's kindness. My professor, a quiet man who'd read my essays, introduced me to a lawyer who took me pro bono for the first stages. I finished what I had started before, but this time, not to be carpeted into a role, rather to gain authority to stand on my own feet. Enrique stayed. He was steady. He is not a caricature of a knight. He's a person who kept my files organized, printed documents, called witnesses, and most importantly, never told me to be smaller. He became the man who sits with you when the nights are quiet and holds coffee near your hand. Later, he'll become more than that. We built an advisory group together, small legal aid for women who get dismissed, discredited, silenced. I used what happened to teach and to protect. There was an odd aftertaste to this kind of vindication, satisfaction berated with emptiness. Seeing them fall was not the same as being held. There are no triumphant parades. There are checks and balances and merciless facts. The court of public opinion is messy, and consequences are complicated. Some nights, I wake and wish for a different ending. Him choosing me openly, not apologizing because an ugly truth was exposed, but because he had real regret. That night, he never came. The months after were quieter. I returned to college and eventually earned a scholarship and a place at a law clinic. My name was mentioned not as the orphan who married into money, but as someone who had refused to be silenced. I wrote an essay about symbolic violence, and it was published in the law journal. People began to reach out, not to pity, but for help. Eduardo retreated from the family business. I heard through the grapevine that sponsors withdrew, that his friends kept distance. He tried twice to rebuild a personal life, and both times it collapsed. People could not stand the idea of someone who had watched a person be humiliated and did nothing. He had traded compassion for comfort, and he had lost the first. Fabiana rebranded and failed. Renata faced legal claims. Juliana vanished. They had used their masks for so long that when masks fell, they did not know who they were. And I kept going. I didn't need to watch them suffer. The knowledge that truth matters was enough. That is the short of it, but there are details worth adding, and for anyone who read the headlines thinking I was a ruthless woman out for revenge, understand this. I wanted justice. I wanted the lie undone. I wanted the world to stop making it easy to hurt someone and get applause for being a victim. I wanted proof that silence is a choice, and I wanted to be allowed to be whole. Update 1. 3 months later. People kept asking how I could sleep at night. The truth is, I slept better. The university offered me a paid internship in a legal aid clinic. My piece in the law journal got noticed by a professor who helped me apply for a small grant. Enrique's quiet competence turned into a trusted partnership. We formalized the small legal aid project and began taking local pro bono cases for women dismissed after reporting harassment. The cases were hard and the victories small, but those small wins felt bigger than any public spectacle. Eduardo attempted to contact me once, via a lawyer, offering money and an apology. I declined. His apology was to preserve his image, not to repair what he'd broken. Later, he published a tepid letter about learning humility. The comments were unkind. Reputation once lost is not easily reclaimed. Update 2. 9 months later. Fabiana moved away. She tried one last rebrand as an activist and failed spectacularly. Evidence followed her. Renata has been hit with labor claims that cost her contracts. Juliana teaches a weekend course somewhere in the countryside now. Imagine that. A woman who once sought the limelight reduced to imposter whispers. I have no joy in any of it. It simply is how truth behaves in time. The legal clinic expanded. We now help not only women who are slandered, but those facing institutionally enabled harassment. I lecture occasionally. The city paper ran a profile about my small practice and Enrique, describing how two exhausted people turned failure into a service. Friends came back, the ones who mattered. Family? I didn't have them before, and now I had chosen my own. Update 3. 2 years later. I married Enrique in a small civil ceremony, not a fairy tale, a practical, tender celebration in the park with 2 friends and a cake. The woman who rose from the rain was not into dramatics. I am still doing legal work. The boarding room is gone. My apartment has a window with light and a shelf of books. Some nights I still think about the woman standing in that mansion, signed divorce paper in hand, drenched in rain. I wish I could hug her. I do now, in ways words cannot say. To those reading, you are not what was done to you. You are what you choose to do with it. My wounds made me careful and later made me fierce. I did not become a villain. I became myself.